let's get on some of the other news of the day. Australia's most elite soldiers are about to face unprecedented scrutiny on the battlefield as the Department of Defense says they will force them to wear new body cameras in order to expose potential misconduct, but also rebut false claims. Joining me now to discuss this is the Australian's foreign editor, Greg Sheridan. Greg, thanks so much for joining me tonight. Before I get to the other news of the day, what do you make of this story? This was a recommendation by the Brereton Report, but it's already sparking backlash among some Special Forces troops. Is this, do you think, necessary?
Well, James, it's great to be with you. I'd use a very technical term about this proposition. I'd say that it is barking mad. We are going to take the one tiny speck of the Australian Defence Force, which is capable of undertaking combat operations, and we're going to render it completely impotent and worthless. You know, it can be useful in a particular intelligence gathering operation, such as the assassination of Osama bin Laden. You wanted a historic record for that very defined, very short operation for somebody to wear a camera. But other than that, the idea that any combat soldier going into combat is going to wear this is just insane. I mean, how can a soldier sort of take a split-second decision to save his life, to save his comrade's life, when he's got to calculate how will this be seen on camera? So it might not only be a question of human rights or the law, but how will this look if I swear vociferously or make some comment which is, you know, injudicious or politically incorrect or something? And we know that these tapes, you know, get out later on and are used against people. This is a grotesque, insane decision. It certainly guarantees that our soldiers will never do anything wrong. It guarantees that they'll never do anything at all. I don't know. Look, I'm a defence hawk. I don't know why we bother spending $50 billion on our defence budget every year when we are determined that nobody in the Australian Defence Force will ever be capable of combat.
Well, I mean, what does this say, Greg, to potential recruits or even people who are in the service? It says, you know, we will demoralise you because we don't trust you, and we don't trust you to be doing the right thing when you're out on operations for your country. I mean, it would seem to me like this would be completely contrary to the longer-term goal of building up our forces to counter threats that are basically, you know, screaming at alert level already.
No, James, your error here is that, as usual, you're being far too generous about this. It's not any of those things. It is barking mad. It is just barking mad. I mean, you can't think of a sillier, more ridiculous proposition. And that is, if this is implemented, it's the end of the Special Forces, and the Special Forces have been the tip of the spear. I mean, one reason they may well have had some serious trouble is because they've been wildly overused, because for decades now, both governments of both persuasions, Liberal and Labor, the only people they'll send into combat are the Special Forces because they can take care of themselves and they can do the job. Now, this overuse, in my opinion, may well have led to some real troubles amongst them. Therefore, you correct the overuse, but, you know, to subject them to this. Look, I wouldn't like to wear a camera myself every day. I don't know if you would. I mean, I just think the whole thing is insane. It shows that we regard our soldiers as criminals until proven innocent.
It's absolutely.
And that they're going to be required to you know, observe every politically correct social dictum. The last thing we want them to do is be able to fight a war.
Well, exactly right. I mean, and, you know, oh, that guy didn't use the right fork in the mess hall at dinner. But anyway, Greg, why don't we move on to the next topic, big story here. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken of the U.S. meeting with China and President Xi Jinping. What did you make of this visit and also this push by the Biden administration to normalize relations and almost act like everything is okay? The spy balloon, they said, was, oh, that was just an accident. They didn't mean to do it. What did you make of this, Greg?
Well, look, it's a bit hard to read the Biden administration because Joe Biden is so, you know, perennially confused in his pronouncements and so on. But overall, James, I would give the Biden administration good marks on China. Bad marks on a lot of other things, but good marks on China. They've been pretty resolute They've followed through with AUKUS. They're going to make nuclear propulsion for submarines available to us. They've passed, and the President has signed legislation restricting high-tech exports to China. They've been quite tough-minded in international fora. Now, you can see the latest moves as simply a sensible, prudent desire on their part to manage the relationship. So, you know, even with the Soviet Union during the Cold War, you had all kinds of mechanisms to manage the relationship, to make sure there was never an accident or that you never got to conflict through miscalculation. The Chinese have been incredibly resistant to setting up a hotline or imposing guardrails or anything like that. So I don't want to put a bad interpretation yet on the Biden administration. We'll see what unfolds. But so far, I think they've been pretty good. But there is a danger of confusing their message, of course, to their own electorate and to the wider world. But I wouldn't reach a negative conclusion yet.
Interesting. All right, finally, before I let you go, I'm absolutely fascinated by this story out of the Middle East, to go to the other side of the world. Meeting between Saudi Arabia's foreign minister and his Iranian counterpart in Tehran. Now, considering the tensions between these two nations, what do you make of this? And does this show that the Abrams Accords are just, you know, that whole era is now over? Are the Saudis and Iran now getting too close?
Yeah, so I think this is a very concerning development indeed, James. And whereas I think the Biden administration has been good on China, I think it's been disastrous in the Middle East, utterly disastrous. It hates the Abraham Accords because they were designed by Donald Trump. Maybe hates is too strong a word, but it doesn't invest in them because they were a success of Donald Trump, and it has a doctrine that nothing Trump did is any good. The key partnership in the Middle East after US-Israel is US-Saudi Arabia. The Saudis are not a lovely regime, there's no doubt about that, but they're not the worst in the world and they're not the worst in the Middle East. And they have been very important strategic allies of the United States for many, many decades. And the key fault line in the Middle East got nothing to do with Israel. It's between Shia Islam, and represented by Iran, and Sunni Islam, represented by Saudi Arabia. But the Biden administration has been so, you know, dilatory and such a dilettante in relation to Israel, so unenthusiastic about the Abraham Accords, and so basically hostile to Saudi Arabia, that it has pushed the Saudis into an accommodation with Iran, or at least it's pushed them in that direction. Now, if that really bears fruit, that's very, very bad for American interests, because that would free Iran and it would empower Iran. And Iran's agenda is diametrically opposed to the agenda of the West and of the United States and of democracy and of Israel and of all of our friends in the Middle East. So, you know, I give Biden pretty good marks on China. I give him very, very, very bad marks in the Middle East. And this is an early fruit of that.
Greg Sheridan, thanks for your time. Appreciate you breaking down that shocking little bit of diplomacy for us.